Hello and welcome to New York's Penn Station. Today we're heading to Canada, riding north to Toronto on Amtrak's Maple Leaf. Our journey begins where our adventure on the Lakeshore Limited left off, Amtrak's Moynihan train hall. I can't not talk about the hall, because just look at it, it's amazing. Sure, it's been open for a little over 2.5 years by now, but it still leaves me in awe every time I travel through NYC. Moynihan covers a total of 31,000 square feet, serving tracks 5 through 16. The main operators running through the train hall are Amtrak and the Long Island Railroad, though most LIRR trains run on tracks 17 through 21, accessed via the West End Concourse. Across the hall is our first stop this morning, Amtrak's Metropolitan Lounge. Access to lounges across the Northeast is granted to passengers with same-day first class or sleeper accommodations. Entrance is also granted to passengers with Amtrak Select Plus or Select Executive Rewards status. Our ticket today is in business class, which does not qualify for entry, so I use one of my lounge passes to get inside. I'll be perfectly honest, the only time I'll ever consider using a lounge pass is when traveling through New York, as the rest of the lounges on the network don't come close to this one. The lounge here at Moynihan is incredible, with plenty of places to sit and relax or get some work done. It's also extremely quiet this early in the morning, which is wonderful. Amtrak provides free Wi-Fi for all passengers, plus a business center with a printer for those still on the job. The main reason I chose to access the lounge today is complimentary breakfast. The lounge includes a full-service bar with plenty of snacks, drinks, and larger meal options. Options include salads, sandwiches, pastries, and other snack items to eat, plus a large selection of sodas, coffee, and alcoholic beverages, all of which are complimentary. For breakfast today, I went with a ham and cheese croissant, a chocolate croissant, and a glass of cold brew coffee. An equivalent meal from any of the coffee stalls downstairs would have been close to $15, but for us, it's totally free. I also recommend grabbing some pre-packaged snacks while in the lounge, as only beverages are complimentary on today's ride. Amtrak's Maple Leaf is one of 3 international services operated by the national rail provider, the other 2 being Amtrak Cascades to Vancouver and the Adirondack to Montreal. Because it's an international service, a valid passport, passport card, or Nexus card is needed for all US citizens over the age of 16. Note that these requirements do not apply to anyone outside of the US, so be sure to double check what is necessary for your country of origin. After finishing up our delicious breakfast, the first boarding call is made for the Maple Leaf. As with most of our departures out of New York, I decided to board via the West End Concourse. Waiting down on track 6 is train 63, the Maple Leaf. Business class on today's train is located in the rear half of the business cafe car. Despite the limited seating, I much prefer these to the standard Amfleet 1 business class coaches, as they provide the wider and generally more comfortable armchairs. Before we head out of New York, let's take a look at our route up into Canada. Amtrak's Maple Leaf begins heading north out of New York and up the Hudson River Valley. We cruise through Poughkeepsie and Hudson, hitting 110 before our first longer stop in Albany. Our train swaps locomotives and then heads west, making stops in Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, with our last stop in the US coming just shy of the Niagara River. Crossing into Canada, we exit the train for Customs and Border Patrol. Once everyone is cleared, we reboard the train, this time manned by VIA staff, and continue on west. The tracks follow the south coast of Lake Ontario, turning north through Hamilton to head up the west coast of the Great Lake, arriving at the Maple Leaf's final destination of Toronto Union Station. We'll cover a total of 544 miles en route to Toronto, with a travel time of 12 hours and 23 minutes. Boarding concludes a little after 7:15, and our train rolls out of Penn Station, beginning our ride towards Canada. We breach the darkness north of 123rd Street, the Henry Hudson Parkway between us and the banks of the Hudson River. Flipping sides with the parkway, the Hudson River fills the window. Even though this is our second time riding through the Hudson River Valley in the past month, this is the first time we'll see it in daylight, as our previous ride was shrouded in darkness due to our delayed arrival on the Lakeshore Limited. In fact, this is literally the next day from that video, so when I said we were picking up where we left off, I meant it. Appearing through the early morning fog is the first landmark heading north, the Tappan Zee Bridge. I've seen your comments, I've heard your outcry, so yes, I will be referring to this bridge as the Tappan Zee Bridge from here on out. The Tappan Zee Bridge extends 3 miles between New York and New Jersey and peaks at 419 feet above the water. Though made of multiple smaller spans, the central span is easily the longest at 1,200 feet. Croton-Harmon is our first intermediate stop en route to Toronto. Croton-Harmon is the northern terminus for Metro North's electrification. The yard here is a major service and storage facility for the Hudson Line and its many M3 and M7 EMUs. As we head out of Croton-Harmon, it's time to turn our attention inwards to take a look at these fantastic business class seats. Unlike business class on most Amtrak routes in the Northeast, the Amfleet 1 Business Cafe cars are operated in a 2+1, which affords larger and wider seats. Each seat offers around a foot of legroom between one's knees and the next row, with plenty of space beneath to stretch out. The footrest for each seat folds down from the seat back using the pedal on the side. Even with the added legroom, the rows are still too close together for it to be useful for my 6'3" frame. The seat back pocket is as you would expect on Amtrak and includes the safety information card. Tray tables are found in the seatbacks, the table translating quite far to span the increased space between rows. The usual 2 lights are found above each row, with 2 outlets on the wall just below the window. The upholstery on these seats is fantastic. The big armchairs are much wider than the usual business class seats, and include more cushioning and armrests on both sides of the seat. Because of the 2x1 arrangement, the seats can also be farther apart, and thus include a central armrest on the paired side with 2 cup holders, providing some much needed separation from your seatmate. Reaching beneath the seat, we can pull the leg rest up, which ratchets into place. It's a nice addition, but as with the footrest, the seats are still a bit too cramped for the leg rest to really be useful. Pushing the lower lever beside us sees the leg rest swing back beneath the seat. Using the upper lever, the seat back can also be reclined around 25 to 30 degrees. Because business class is a premium service with business travelers, it's usually much quieter than coach, which is certainly the case here. There's also an interesting quirk surrounding this route and the business class ticket price. Depending on when and how far in advance you book your ticket, it's often possible to find business class tickets for a single dollar more than coach. Our ticket was closer to $30 more than coach, but even at that price, it's still definitely worth the dedicated seating area, larger and more comfortable seats, and complimentary beverages. As we pass Jones Point and Iona Island, a CSX intermodal train appears on the opposite bank. From Croton-Harmon to West Park just north of Poughkeepsie, CSX's River subdivision runs parallel to the Empire Corridor, giving us a race between passenger and freight. Of course, it doesn't take much for us to win that one, the CSX train disappearing behind us as we continue north. The front half of our business class coach is the cafe car for the Maple Leaf. Amtrak's cafe menus offer a variety of snacks, drinks, and larger food items for purchase, all at a fairly reasonable price. One of the best perks for business class passengers are complimentary beverages, so I grabbed a cold brew coffee and a bottle of water on our first trip to the bar. West Point Military Academy looms high above the Hudson as we pass Garrison Station. The academy is the oldest of the 5 American military academies and trains cadets entering the U.S. Army. The hills grow taller and taller the farther north we ride, giving a valley feel to the aptly named Hudson River Valley. One of the best aspects of riding in business class, at least from a railfan's perspective, is the fantastic window view out the rear of the train. The final vestibule has been locked out for now, but that will change once we depart Albany. The sun finally breaks through the low-hanging cloud cover, the light bringing life to the Hudson River as we head under the Kingston-Rhinecliff Bridge. Approaching Albany, our train reaches the first of 3 segments of Class 6 track. Class 6 tracks have a top speed of 110 miles per hour, and our engineer makes sure to use all but 1 mile per hour of that limit. Our brief stint at 110 comes to an end as we pull into Albany. Albany is the first smoke stop on the Maple Leaf, and the point where we swap locomotives. Leading us up this far has been P32 ACDM number 703. The P32 is a dual-mode locomotive, allowing it to get power from either its onboard diesel engine or from a third-rail pickup on the rear bogie. The third-rail electric power allows these locomotives to comply with the restriction of diesel operations in either of the 2 New York termini. Once in Albany, continuing trains swap over to a diesel P42 DC for the remainder of their journeys. Another addition exclusive to the P32 is the escape hatch in the nose. The hatch gives engineers an alternate escape option in the event of a fire while in a tunnel. This allows them to escape onto the tracks ahead should the side exits be blocked by flames, fumes, or physical restrictions. Originally, only Metro North's P32s featured the escape hatch, however Amtrak retrofitted their fleet with the same hatch due to general safety concerns and occasional operations into Grand Central. The locomotive swap has been narrowed down to a science. The process begins with the disconnect of lines between the locomotive and cars. Once disconnected, 703 pulls away from the Maple Leaf, leaving our train as a stranded rake of coaches. The power and brake lines have been laid out on the tracks beneath our lead coach to help speed up the connection process once the P42 backs on. A few minutes later, P42 number 92 rolls out of the yard and backs on to train 63. I only realized this in post, but 92 is the same locomotive that led our ride on the Lakeshore Limited the day prior. New locomotive connected, it's back to the business class car. The doors slide shut and train 63 pulls out of Albany. Leaving Albany, we head past a storage yard for private rail cars. The 2 front and center are New York Central's Babbling Brook and Union Pacific's Pacific Union Pullman sleeper cars. Behind that are 2 Northern Pacific Vista Domes with the Chesapeake and Ohio's Chapel Hill on the end. The tracks curve westward around Amtrak's Albany maintenance facility and over the Hudson River via the Broadway Bridge. The track speed again reaches 110 miles per hour between Albany and Schenectady, though this time we're treated to a much nicer view as we finally have access to the rear vestibule. Amtrak's Empire Corridor is one of only a handful of lines in the US that reach 110 miles per hour. Other services outside of the Northeast Corridor that regularly see triple-digit speeds are the Wolverine, Keystone Corridor, Hartford Line, and as of only a few months ago, trains operating on the Chicago to St. Louis higher speed line. Our train slows for a brief stop in Schenectady before powering back up to 110 along the Erie Canal and Mohawk River. If you're enjoying our ride on the Maple Leaf, why not hit that subscribe button? It's totally free and it really helps support the channel. I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my patrons and channel members. Y'all are amazing and I cannot thank you enough for your incredible support. If you too want your name in the video or just want to support the channel in more ways than one, then head on over to the links in the description below. The high speeds come to an end as we continue west, the Erie Canal staying by our side until Utica. Slowing for our stop in Syracuse, we passed by the eastbound Lakeshore Limited. In a rare sight, a business class car has been added to the rear of the sleepers, but what's even rarer is the entire Empire service train coupled on to the end of the baggage car. Syracuse is our second smoke stop of the day. Our stop here is extended a little longer than expected as we wait for freight trains to clear the tracks ahead. Departing Syracuse, I figured it was time for lunch. For lunch today, I went with a caprese sandwich with a bottle of body armor and sparkling water to drink. The sandwich was actually quite tasty and filling, though it was definitely a little on the bready side, but for $7.75, it was a pretty good deal. The first sign of international travel is handed out as we leave Syracuse, our customs declaration card. In order to enter Canada, all passengers must fill out this card before arriving at the border checkpoint in Niagara Falls. Internet is provided free to all passengers on board. Connecting is easy and the speeds actually aren't half bad, at least on this route, averaging 3.89 megabits per second. "79 miles and an hour and 10 minutes later, train 63 pulls into Rochester. Despite Rochester being the third largest city in New York, our stop here is not a smoke stop, and we carry on a few minutes later. Of course, it wouldn't be an Amtrak ride without some form of delay. The conductor comes on over the PA to inform everyone that the line ahead of us has been limited to single track due to maintenance work, so we'll be stationary for a bit to allow freight trains to pass.
But as of right now, we're going to be waiting for some freight trains to clear up in front of us, whether it be passing us going east or west. But right now, we're going to be waiting for some to clear up. We could be backing up again. When I get more of an update, we'll let you know. Again, we're just going to wait for some freight trains to clear up. We do apologize for the inconvenience.
Fortunately, the delay is only around 20 minutes, our train clearing the choke point ahead of our stops in Buffalo. Buffalo's second and significantly more accessible Exchange Street station is our penultimate stop here in the US. Exchange Street is located only a few blocks from downtown and is within walking distance of the Buffalo Light Rail's Erie Canal Harbor Station. A few passengers make their way on board and we continue on towards Canada.
across the border into Canada. Go give us next stop in Niagara Falls, New York, 35 minutes.
Leaving Buffalo, the tracks butt up against the Niagara River and the border with Canada. At just under a half-mile away, it's more than possible to wave to someone on international soil, though we'll have to wait another hour before we leave the US. Niagara Falls, New York is our last stop in the United States. The crew made it very clear that this was the last domestic stop before we pulled out of the US, crossing into Canada via the Whirlpool Bridge. For a brief moment, we get a perfect shot of both American and Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, the spray obstructs our view of Niagara Falls, but the water can be seen rushing over the edge of its smaller counterpart. The bridge crossing into Canada is spectacular. From our position atop the upper deck, we get a picturesque view of the teal waters of the Niagara River 238 feet below. The Whirlpool Bridge also serves as a roadway crossing, with 2 lanes of traffic on the lower deck. The bridge directly in front of us is the disused Michigan Central Railway Bridge. The 250-foot tall bridge was built in 1925 and served Canadian Pacific, New York Central, Penn Central, and Conrail trains. The bridge was abandoned in 2001 due to the fact that trains ran through the tourist district in Niagara Falls, which was considered both a nuisance and a safety concern. Leaving the span, we arrive at our first stop in Canada at Via Rail's Niagara Falls Station. Niagara Falls is where we must exit the train for Customs and Border Patrol inspection before being allowed into Canada. I didn't film any of the customs process out of respect and safety concerns, however I'll explain what happened inside the facility. Once we came to a stop in Canada, a Border Patrol agent boarded the train and asked the business class passengers to gather their belongings and exit the train. From there, we were guided inside and told to put our bags along one wall while we stood along another. A sniffer dog then came through to check for any illegal substances. When the dog was finished, we collected our bags and proceeded to the border control checkpoint where our passport and declaration card were scanned. After being cleared, we were asked to exit the building and head back out to the front to re-enter the station's waiting hall where we would wait to reboard the train ahead of departure. The process was fairly straightforward, and the staff made it easy to know where to go and what to do at any point. If you're traveling on one of Amtrak's international services and are still worried about the Border Patrol process, I've linked the official Amtrak guide video below for more information. We've got a longer wait here as there are still 4 more coaches worth of passengers to clear, so before heading inside the station, we can take a walk up front to get a good look at our Amtrak train on foreign soil. Out in front is our beautiful P42 DC Locomotive number 92. After all is said and done today, Locomotive 92 will have taken us 1,221 miles over the past 3 days, a journey that started in Chicago and ends in Toronto. What's certainly of note here is just how overgrown the tracks are. Even though the station sees daily use, the weeds have still been left to grow well above the tracks. I'm not sure why VIA would ever allow tracks to get like this, though it may be the kind of thing where because it's not used by true VIA trains, the maintenance schedule is a little more lax than most other stations. I'm not 100% sure how much time we have here in Niagara Falls, so not wanting to miss our train, it's time to head inside VIA Rail's Niagara Falls station. After hanging around for 20 minutes, reboarding begins for Amtrak Train 63, now VIA Rail Train 98. Snagging a seat on the opposite side of where we were, our train pulls out of Niagara Falls, beginning our first few miles on Canadian soil. In Niagara Falls, the train changes hands from Amtrak to VIA, and with that change comes VIA staff and VIA practices. A part of those practices are safety briefings for select passengers. I was selected by the member of staff in our car to be briefed on the rear safety door. Never in my life have I been given a safety briefing on a train, so to have it happen on my first train in Canada was a little odd. Leaving our first intermediate stop of St. Catharines, we pick up speed towards Toronto. The overgrown tracks of Niagara Falls are replaced by well-maintained ones as we head west. In a welcoming salute to Canada, a massive Canadian flag appears over the trees, the maple leaf flapping elegantly in the wind. Lake Ontario makes a brief appearance in the distance as we cross the Jordan Station train bridge. Hamilton Harbor is a much more present sight as we wrap around the curved tracks between the south and west banks of Lake Ontario. The tracks from Niagara Falls to Toronto are shared with GO Transit commuter trains, though you wouldn't think that given it takes until Aldershot Station for us to see one. GO Transit is the Toronto area's commuter rail provider, and we'll have a ride with them in a later video. The ride north is fairly uneventful until we reach Via Rail's Toronto maintenance facility. The Via and GO Transit shared facility is home to many past and current pieces of rolling stock, including one of the last remaining examples of an LRC locomotive. There are also a few old sleeper cars, some retired Bud Rail diesel cars, and plenty of LRC and HP2 corridor coaches. Passing the Toronto Yard means we're on our final approach to Toronto's Union Station, and only a few minutes later, the beginnings of the Toronto skyline rise above the trees. Our train heads into the rail trench southwest of downtown, passing the CN Tower before coming to a stop at Toronto's Union Station. Even after all the freight delays earlier, we arrived only 35 minutes behind schedule, which isn't half bad considering Amtrak and Via's track record for tardiness. Grabbing our belongings, we can head forward and down onto the platforms of Toronto. With one final look at our American train on Canadian soil, we can head down into the station where we'll bring today's video to a close. Next week, we'll be 8,000 miles away on the island of Zanzibar in Tanzania to fly with KLM to Amsterdam on board one of KLM's Boeing 777-200s. If you're new around here, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. It's totally free and it really helps support the channel. If you want to go the extra mile with your support, then feel free to check out the channel's Patreon or become a channel member. If you too want your name in the video, access to exclusive weekly posts, and even the opportunity to vote on future videos, then click the links in the top right or in the description below to learn more. But anyways, that's all I have for today. Thanks for riding with me, and I'll see you in the next one.